Hey, this is Dan from Fisher Jeep Adventures, and our rear geometry correction brackets and our lower and upper control arms from MetalCloak arrived, and today we're going to go through how to install those on a Jeep JLU Rubicon. If this is something you're interested in, please stick around for the video. Alright, so what we have are two geometry correction brackets for the lower or for the rear lower and upper control arms. And what this bracket does is it mounts to the factory mounting position, and it drops the lower control arm and the upper control arm down so that the geometry is more flat, so the suspension articulates and travels kind of like it's supposed to. Because we're going ahead and doing that, I went ahead and got the lower control arms as well as the upper control arms for the rear as well. So we don't need these necessarily for their adjustment, kind of like what we did with the front lower control arms. I wanted them more for the benefits of the joint itself, as well as the strength of the control arm. They're made out of DOM tubing, and the patented Duraflex joint by MetalCloak allows a lot of different things. So it doesn't have a lot of the typical issues that you have with a pressed-in bushing that you have like on your stock control arms or on a fixed control arm you can buy from other companies. It's 100% rebuildable, and it has a lot of good functions as far as its ability to articulate. So it's going to allow your suspension to travel easier as well as absorb some things. So I think that it's got a really beneficial component for our Jeep, especially given the weight and stress that we're putting on it with our overlanding setup. So it should be pretty simple. All we're going to do is jack the vehicle up. We're going to take the tires off, and then we'll start taking the lower control arm and the upper control arm off one side at a time, put the bracket in, and then reinstall it. So these will be reset to the factory settings, reusing the factory hardware, and then we have a hardware kit just to install the correction bracket. All right, since we have the bump stop extension blocks for the rear end, there's no way to get a impact wrench in there, so we're gonna loosen the upper control arm with a 21mm wrench, and it's got a factory stop nut on it. All right, we're going to save the factory hardware. And for the upper control arm, it comes with an easy nut so that you can fish it up in there. And we'll just loosen the rest of it up. All right, now that we got the control arms out, we're going to take the MetalCloak bracket, and it basically just slides up into the stock locations. We're going to use the upper hole and the lower hole. just to hold it in place. And you can see how far it drops the brackets to try and keep them, or to where they mount, to try and keep them as parallel as possible. The one thing we do have to do is on this hole, because of the bolt comes through, we have to drill a 9/16 hole through that. So this is just holding it in place, and we're going to take our drill bit, feed it through, and we're going to... All right, guys, so this has been a little bit more difficult than I had anticipated. Once the bracket is up, you have to drill a 9/16 hole, a relief hole into the frame for the bolt that has to hold the upper control arm. The best way to do that is there's a sleeve that goes on the inside of this to keep it from compressing, and put this through, loosen and tighten it. And then the lower control arm, the old lower control arm bracket, there's also a sleeve that goes through that. Let me show you what those are. So it's basically like a crush sleeve to keep the bracket from crushing. So this one goes up on the top, this one goes on the bottom. This is a pain in the butt because the factory key right here is almost impossible to align with this bracket on there. But after fiddling with it, I finally got it. There's also a bolt that comes this is the driver's side. So if you see right here, there's a bolt that runs through this. This is the skid. So there's a bolt that runs through that goes through the pad that creates the lower control arm mount. You got to drill a 1/2 inch hole through here to get the bolt in there. So I did that, painted everything, and we're getting ready to tighten everything down, and then we'll measure the control arms, install them, and then I think this is going to be it for tonight, and I'll have to do the other side tomorrow. All right, this just shows that this is the same. This is more of a square tubing for the rear lower control arm versus a very different DOM tubing for the lower. And then the upper is rectangular, a lot like the front lower was. Again, versus the sturdier, stronger DOM version. So we'll line this up and get them installed here in just a second. All right, so the factory settings say that this should be 20 inches center to center, and this should be 17.5. So I have these set at 17.5 for both, since we're maintaining the factory setting. But I checked the lower control arm from the factory, and it is at 19 3/4. So I was kind of concerned about that. So I set it just right at 19, a little over 19 3/4. And we'll go from there. All right, so we put the adjustable end in here. There's a little bolt there, and we'll just let that set, and we'll get the axle aligned here in a minute. And then we'll put the lower control arm in. All right, guys, so it is the next day, and I worked into the evening. It got dark, but we got the right side complete, and I'll go over, where everything's at. All right, so we have both upper and lowers in. We have the bracket in, and I paint pinned all the marks on things. We got the blocks reestablished, and you can see just looking at them how parallel they are, or closer to parallel they are. This one in particular is parallel to the ground. This one's got a little bit of an angle. When we jump over to the passenger side, we'll show you what the difference is. All right, so here's the suspension as it sets currently. Gotta clean everything off. You can see that the control arm here and here, they got more of an angle to them, and this geometry correction bracket just brings them back down so that it's a nice level plane for the axle to travel in. So process is the same. We'll drop the control arms. Got to take that block off to get the top bolt out, and then we'll just go about going through the process. Alright guys, so here you can see the geometry is more closer to the stock form. Now it does stick down low, as you guys might see, but MetalCloak put this nice basically rock ramp, if you will, so if something hits it, it's going to kick underneath the control arm instead of getting hung up on it. So quality stuff by them to put that component in. Alright guys, so that was the install of the MetalCloak rear geometry correction brackets and the upper and lower rear control arms. The install went pretty smooth. The instructions by MetalCloak are really clear, and it just takes some time to make sure that everything fits right. And there are some things that you can do to help yourself out, like put a strap on the rear axle to hold it in place when you get the factory control arms loose, so you don't have so much pulling to do once you're done. Other than that, it's just going through the process. It just, you know, kind of takes a little while. But for me, easy install. It took me probably 4 hours that I spread over 2 afternoons after work to get it done in the driveway. And that was it. So we're really excited about the product. We're excited about the joints and kind of see how that's all going to work for us. We're getting ready to go to Kentucky to do some of the Kentucky Adventure Trail here in a week or so, so we'll really get the chance to get it tested out. So if you're a subscriber, thanks for coming back. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, hit that like button, leave a comment if you want to, and stay tuned, because you know, one of our next big trips is going to be moving to Kentucky here, and I think I'm going to be out there for 4 or 5 days, and I think it's really going to be cool. So this is Dan from Fisher Jeep Adventures, and we'll see you on the trail.